Hey everyone, Kate Bora and Fiona Pearman joining you for this week's Facebook Live as we continue to dig into the conversation around curiosity. And I think, Fee, one of the best places for us to start to practice this skill, this mindset of curiosity is on ourselves in context of really starting to build our self-awareness.
We often encourage and we say to people, start to get curious with yourself. What are you noticing? What are you seeing? What we know about self-awareness is most of us will put our hand up and say, yep, I'm super self-aware. Harvard did some really good studies on this about 4 years ago. And what they found was that only 15% of us actually meet the criteria of being self-aware. So most of us have got a fair amount of work to do to fully understand ourselves. And if we want to build this leadership skill, this capability around curiosity, starting to understand ourselves and what's going on for us, not just at a surface level, but a little bit deeper, is a really interesting and provocative way, I think, to engage with this.
Yeah, I think I love holding self-awareness and curiosity together because I think from a leadership capability point of view, they're X factors, right? One allows us to really boldly and courageously dig into understanding how we see ourselves, but also how other people see us and leveraging that in order to show up differently, to make different decisions for ourselves, for our colleagues, for our organizations, for our teams, etc. I think one of the things when we then hold seeking feedback or seeking the perspectives of others, and of course it's easier to do that with our supporters. It's harder to lean into that constructive feedback from those that hold different perspectives for us, is that often that feedback can have the potential to really destroy our confidence or break it down. And I think that's one of the reasons why curiosity is so powerful to hold in that context or in that conversation, because whenever we get feedback, and it's really human nature, right? We've all been there, us still always consistently, when we receive feedback, we immediately go to judge it. We immediately to go, are you right or wrong? It's almost instantaneous. And we're in defend mode when we're in that space. And so I think what curiosity allows us to do is actually not have to judge or assess a piece of feedback, but actually hold it for what it is, which is a perspective. Hold it in a relatively neutral space so that we can learn from it.
And this is easier said than done, right? Which is why we're encouraging you to give it a go. Like, it's probably not going to be easy the first few times. And certainly I found that personally. I've worked with some great coaches and mentors who've supported me to just get curious about why is it that I'm so activated, or why is it that I'm so upset by a piece of feedback, and what's going on for me here. Because once we start to ask ourselves some good questions and we get that perspective of others, we're starting to unpack some of the maybe long-held assumptions and beliefs that aren't really that useful to us. And when we can see, actually, there is maybe one small piece of truth there. There's something there that I could use, but it's not saying that I'm a bad person, or that I'm not competent, or that I'm not good at my work. It's simply saying, here's an area where if you focused on it, you could improve a bit. And I think if we want to be lifelong learners, we want to be people who are improving, the willingness to take that feedback on board, to get curious about, even if we do feel a bit reactive and defensive in the first instance, even to go with that, oh, that's interesting, I've got that going on. What's actually happening for me here? It gives me time and space to go, I've got something to learn, rather than this means I'm bad, good or bad. And that neutrality, not a passive neutrality, but an active neutrality around what's being said to me or what I'm noticing, helps me start to build, I think, new capability and skill.
Yeah, and I think, what's present for me now is times in my career where I've gotten feedback that I didn't agree with. And when I've been able to actually put the context of that feedback and really step into their perspective, what might be going on in their world. And I think this starts to talk to a whole other conversation around influence and building trust and again, stakeholder management. But I think when you can hold that, it's not necessarily that's a truth for everyone. It's a truth for that person by virtue of their context, their perspective. And then you, again, come from, okay, well, what could I do differently in order to influence that individual? Any feedback, whether you agree with it or not, that becomes irrelevant, right? Whether it's right or wrong, it's okay, that's the truth for that person. If I want that person to have a different experience of me as a leader or as a stakeholder, then what is it that I need to do differently? And this really comes back to the crux of self-awareness, right? And all our work in leadership development, which is the only person who can change is you, your experience, how you show up, the decisions you make, the actions you take, and our ability to learn about the impact we have on others and to come at it from a curiosity rather than a judgment point of view. That is when it all opens up, right? Because that's when we can have a little bit of fun with it, maybe not the right word, but it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. What matters is what I can do differently here and how I can show up differently and have be more effective as a leader, build influence and manage stakeholders. And really, when we think about senior roles, the more senior you get, it is about stakeholder management. And I was coaching someone yesterday who's new in role, acting up in her boss's role, and that hesitation to not want to ask for feedback because worried about being judged. But then the reframe that I shared was, but when you're actually actively seeking it and wanting to get better and working with your stakeholders to do a better job, the message that sends as a leader back to those stakeholders is really strong and in fact actually strengthens your brand, your professional position from their perspective.
I think there's so many ways in which we can, as you say, maybe hold it a little bit lighter. Maybe it can't be so sort of playful with it, but what's a way we can hold it lightly and engage with it and see it as an opportunity rather than, I think many of us take it as criticism. Let's reframe, at least, there's an opportunity here for me to learn something. And the more I do that, the more I'm likely to show up in a way that will be advantageous to me and to the people around me. So we do a lot of this in the Acts of Confidence program. We're constantly, week in, week out, encouraging all our participants to be super curious about themselves, because we know that's where we learn so much about what's working for us, but also the places where we can change, shift and improve, reframe some of those old ideas, those old default beliefs and assumptions. And so if that's of interest, please get in touch. We're about to open up for our next round, which starts at the beginning of May.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to head off now. If you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, head over to our Facebook page, hit like, lots of other videos for you to dig into and to take a look at. And of course, when you're ready to take your next step on your confidence journey, visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.